Hi, I'm Phil Broadhead, Deputy Leader of BCP Council. Welcome to our mini-series of podcasts where we'll be talking to businesses from across the BCP region and explore how they've used some of the grant funding that we've supplied from BCP Council to not just survive but thrive through the pandemic and beyond. In today's episode, I'll be talking to Chris and Paul from an amazing local company called Treehouse Digital that specialise in a whole new technological wave of film production. They're a fantastic local company doing some amazing stuff, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So, Chris and Paul, welcome today. Thanks for joining us for this new podcast. First of all, tell us a little bit about Treehouse Digital, the journey that you've been on, and the business in general.
Hi. We're a bunch of old
Straight
friends.
into the deep end, by the way.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's quite a fun story. We're a bunch of friends. There's 5 directors of the company.
We were a bunch of friends.
And we went to business together. We used to play in a treehouse as kids, and went our different ways. Some of the guys worked in the film industry, others of us went and did other things. And then about 8 to 10 years ago, we kind of got back together and said, look, let's do something together and kind of be the masters of our own destiny and have fun along the way. So we started Treehouse in a little office above Sainsbury's in Boscombe. Did lots of different work, but from corporate work, but also always doing our own work, our own short films and content. We were doing that quite happily for a good few years, constantly making our own awesome stories, and then the pandemic hit, and it sort of shifted things slightly. But for us, it was a good thing.
So, how long have you been going for now?
We had a bit of a rethink, didn't we? But we've been going. God, what was it? 2000 and where are we now? 22. The pandemic's like a time warp, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It messes with everyone's
like
mind.
8 years. 8 years.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So talk about the pandemic. I mean, we've heard from other businesses in this podcast that we all remember it came out of nowhere and it was existentially worrying for many people. But what did it do for Treehouse?
In many ways, it was a good thing for us. Well, in every way, it was a good thing for us.
But did it feel like that at the time?
At the time, no, we felt the same as everybody else. It's like, what's this? Oh my God, we had the terrifying moments of like, what are we going to do? What does this mean? But our journey took us to a natural sort of point right before the pandemic anyway. We were trying to solve a problem for a feature that we were developing in-house, and we were trying to figure out how to film a certain sequence or the whole thing. And we started to explore things like rear projection and LED backdrops and all this kind of, we knew it was a thing. It was just kind of whispers of a thing at that point. And some people had done it. Some people had done it different ways. We just basically managed to get a test shot that we, with a local company, iMag, who've been our now sort of long-term partners. We managed to do a test shot over at their place with an LED backdrop for this particular project. Speaking very closely always with Epic Games, who'd always sort of supported us. And we did that, and that was right before, what was that, October, November, before the pandemic hit. So the pandemic wasn't a thing at that point. And we did this test shot. It turned out really great. Paul and everyone have built the environments in Unreal for the backdrops.
And for the uninitiated, this is like, if you're doing filming, this is a backdrop. So it looks like you're really out on set, out in the real world, but you can not just change it, but it moves with the camera, so it feels a little bit more in depth than just a painted back screen might have been.
There's a few ways to do it, but essentially, it's a moving backdrop. Matte painting, if you like. And that's in its simplest form, but it offers all the sort of lighting references that you wouldn't get if you were doing it with green screen or what have you. So it just brings a bit more into the scene when you're shooting in camera. But that was what we were exploring.
But the most sort of powerful bit that came out of it was using this computer game engine called Unreal Engine, which is what Fortnite's built on and things. And so we had to find a way of making a car crash, which we couldn't do by going and filming background plates. So we did it in the Unreal Engine, and we could just crash this car over and over again on LED screens with someone just sat in it pretending to crash.
Oh, wow.
And what it did is it opened. So I went and sat in a room for basically 2 months, learning how to do this Unreal Engine. And just the moment we stepped into doing things using game engines, it just, something lit up in us. As soon as we saw the demos of it, we just thought, this is incredible. This is a completely new way of doing things. It's like CG work, computer graphics work, but it's also like live action, all combined in a computer game engine. So this first spark of where we could see ourselves going happened at that moment where we just went, oh my gosh, this is transformational. Someone like me can sit in a room and start making things. So that was really valuable when we were on set, constantly crashing this car. It was really good. And as Chris says, the timing was really quite fortunate because we did that. We released a little video online about how we did it. And then the sort of talk of Mandalorian and all these other things that we're using, this technology suddenly started coming out. And at that time, LEDs were very hard to get hold of. So no one else was able to do any of these sort of tests and things because they didn't have high mag 200 meters down the road to be able to have a test shot with.
Yeah.
So we were very lucky. And then when the pandemic hit, suddenly there were lots of LED screens available because all the events had stopped.
Oh, I see.
And lots of people needing to film.
So there was an opportunity there. So as the pandemic hit, it presented some avenues that you might have been a bit difficult for your industry.
It's like two industries completely transformed almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I think the live events industry, personally, I don't think there was enough done for them in support throughout the pandemic, but that's another podcast. But they literally flicked a switch and that was done.
Mm.
And for us, it was like, okay, what happens to all the projects that are currently in filming? They're in production.
Yeah.
They've still got to keep going. A lot of them still can work in controlled environments, in studios, et cetera, and others were just about to be greenlit and they were like, what are we going to do? And this offered a solution. So I think there was a massive uptake that wouldn't otherwise have happened with the use of LEDs as backdrops, because they may well have just gone onto location if the pandemic hadn't happened at all. So I think there was a sort of skew of the uptake, but we were just there at that point in time, having done a very successful test with the support,
working with the new technology. So where were you based at that time? So when the pandemic hit,
that was when we were in Boscombe still.
That's when you were in Boscombe.
We're above Sainsbury's in Boscombe.
And so what did the pandemic then do to where you were based and your workforce and things?
That lease was coming to an end anyway.
Okay.
And we had, before when there was whispers of the pandemic, we'd already tested working from home because we were doing a lot of editorial. We were delivering to clients out in the US and we needed to know that machine could still operate. Mm-hmm. So we'd already sort of tested that and worked from home. So we were kind of working at home when they said, you got to go work at home. We're like, great, this works. And when it was sort of stretching out a bit, we were like, well, do we renew this lease or not? And I think the answer was no, because we very then quickly realized that if we're going to do what we're currently doing and what people are currently demanding of us, we're going to need more space.
And it was almost like tough love, COVID for us. I mean, it was a horrible time for a lot of people, but on a business point of view, it made us really think about what our value.
Everything got real, didn't it?
And we were relying on. It was almost false signals of, we need to keep this sort of corporate work going, which was keeping us busy, but keeping us too busy to do any of the big bets.
It's such an interesting theme that we've had of these podcasts, talking to a number of businesses that hit that pandemic and just realized that it was a really good opportunity to take stock and go, actually, are we taking our business in the direction that we want to? Are we focused in the right area? Let's use this as a time to go, actually, if we do need to grow, in order to grow, we've got to do this and just stop doing that instead. So it sounds like it was that time for you as well.
I think, there's visionaries out there that can completely turn revenue taps off to take a risk. Or there's people with finance, and we were neither. We were visionaries in a creative sense, but in terms of being able to have, be able to turn the money coming in off, we don't have any, financial backers or anything like that. It's just us making, hand to mouth, month by month at that time.
Yeah.
So it was quite when you look back, it all feels very, very smooth. But actually, there was 2 or 3 months where we were like, we don't know what we're going to do.
What comes next?
And we were quite lucky with Epic.
Yeah, we were with Epic, but that at the same time as not having, it was terrifying not having any support or backup of a finance partner or whatever. At the same time, we weren't bound to one, so we were inherently more agile, which meant that we could make decisions
so that we could
take a big risk. And
again, seeing that with lots of the kind of smaller, in inverted commas, businesses, that actually you can then react more, in a more agile way.
And we also felt leveling. It felt like everyone else had been knocked down to our level as a small company. All those sort of advantages that people have of friends in the industry, networks, financial networks, and all that stuff. That was just ripped away because it was, can you deliver? What can you deliver? And everyone was in our position, and I think a lot of people sat there looking the problem and worrying. Whereas we just went, oh, well, okay, what are we going to do now?
Every crisis presents an opportunity.
Yeah.
Incidentally, love the fact that you guys can get away with calling yourself visionaries and nobody laughs at you. All the rest of us try, and it's just stop talking. He did. We said we're visionaries. It's true. I love it.
Great,
yeah,
well, not me, but
No, I think it's a great thing. So let's talk then about the Bounce Back Challenge Fund. So we're at that point, I suppose, where you've left Boscombe, you're working from home like everyone else is. You've got all these opportunities, and thinking about what comes next. Tell us about the Bounce Back Challenge Fund and the project that you put forward as part of that bid.
Well, there's one bit in between that, which was when we sort of came together with IMAG with the LEDs, we with support from people in the council and various places, we managed to get ourselves into the BIC in the conference centre and take over the main hall.
Because that was empty, yeah.
It was empty.
Yeah, I remember this.
We weren't allowed the heating on, so it was freezing.
This is where you had the big bus in there. Is that
the
the one?
That's exactly why we went. We were looking for a place to basically do a test shot, and we needed a double-decker bus to get through the door.
Yeah.
So we're like, where can we do that? So we were like thinking, bus depots, call them. And it's like there was nowhere that we could do this test shot. And one of the guys had a brainwave like, hey, what's happening with the BIC? So we just inquired, and
the BIC was sat empty.
There was somebody in there rattling around with a pair of keys, a set of keys, and a torch, and that was it. So we're like, yeah, cool. So they let us in for the test. And then what was it, 9-10 months later?
Yeah, we didn't.
Then we left.
We're like squatters.
You literally stayed there.
Yeah, we just did a deal with them. We were like, look, can we?
And this was, if I remember, you had a bus, and then the screens kind of wrapping around it, so you could film inside this bus, and it looked like it was moving and going places and everything.
Yeah, it was a simulated travel.
Cool.
Sort of
There's a Netflix show, and they needed to film a bunch of kids in a bus traveling along during COVID, which is just like.
It's just almost impossible.
Tick none of these boxes.
So we did. We managed to use the BIC, and it was fantastic. And actually, an aside, something I didn't know about the BIC is the roof is covered in solar panels. So all that filming that they did for the bus scenes and everything in the BIC, that was all completely carbon.
Net zero. We love that.
It was insane. We only found out by accident. It was like sort of 3 months in, and they said, we might need to, now the sort of summer's a distant memory, we might need to start charging a bit of electricity now because, are we not paying electricity? No, the whole place has been operating.
That's a huge amount of power.
Yeah, once you get all the practical lights in there as well. I mean, the LEDs aren't as high drawing or whatever you call it, as you would expect, but all of the practical lights for filming are.
They still
draw and fans and all the other stuff and all the special effects gear that they had.
So you had that opportunity as well. So again, testing the technology work, was that Netflix?
That was a Netflix show, with.
Yeah. And then what comes next so back to looking at that project, the Bounce Back Challenge Fund. Walk me through that project and what your thinking was in that.
So really what it was is we realized that we needed to look at beyond the BIC. At some point they kind of want to put concerts back on. They can't have us rattling around in there. So we were looking around for properties, and again, through council connections, the word was put out that we were looking for a home, and we were lucky enough to have a conversation with Bournemouth Pool College, who had a warehouse. So we thought, well, let's go somewhere like that. But the issue we had is, we were fortunate enough to keep these things going during the pandemic, but that was a big commitment to move into a new space and be ready to take on work.
Yeah.
Be it LED or animation work. What needed to happen is it needed to go from classrooms into a workable business space and studio. So we just saw online about the Bounce Back Challenge loan, and we thought this is perfect. What we're willing to try this. This is a completely new thing. Using game engines for filmmaking is a completely new thing. Using LEDs is a completely new thing. This seems like it's a good match because you're looking for the challenge. The fund was looking for innovative ways to get out of COVID,
and not just not survive but thrive. That was our idea. Yeah.
And we thought, well, this is ideal because what we could have done is gone into somewhere like like the building and very much sort of rented a space and
done it in an iterative way. Yeah.
So what we wanted to do was install a network, is to just do a little bit of cleaning up and things, but mainly it was the technical infrastructure to be able to deliver shows and be able to have credibility when people approach us about projects because the infrastructure is in place already. rather than having to say, yeah, we could probably do it, but you're going to have to give us money up front.
I mean, you demonstrated the technology that you were doing things differently. You'd worked with some partners like Netflix and others, but you've got to be able to, if somebody knocks on your door and say, can you come and help us film this? You've got to have a place to do it and equipment as well. And is that what the project was funding essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So how did it go? Immediately you've won the Bounce Back Challenge fund to support your project. Was it easy? Was it straightforward? Did it go wrong? Did you have to think again? Walk me through the journey.
I think the process, you were sort of deeper in it, weren't you, than I was? But from looking in on it from within the business, it felt very smooth. I think we had a really clear plan on what we wanted to do, which is, we'll talk about in a minute what we're currently doing, and that was a part of the journey that was an absolute necessity for us to get this set up, and it timed out beautifully with one of the last in pandemic LED virtual production shoots that we were doing, and our first ever entirely in Unreal Engine short films that we created, which was the thing that people saw and generated the buzz in order for us to get to where we currently are now. So having that infrastructure and, like you said, the tech sort of spec and kit out that we needed in order to service both of those worlds, it helped us with the R&D in the virtual production, LED virtual production world, and it helped us with setting up for our first production. Entirely,
because you were trying to do multiple things at once. I suppose you had clients that you were working with that wanted to use your technology to film, and then you're trying to research and go even further, spread out into animation and stuff like that as well. So that's a lot to be taking on in one. How many people did you have working for the firm at that point?
There were seven people.
It's quite a lot for a relatively small team.
Yeah. I mean, it was 7 at the time, and it's now. We're ramping up now to like 30 to 40.
Wow.
Currently.
So what happened next then? So you were at that stage, and I mean, I came to see you. Gosh, I can't remember how long ago it was now. But again, you were doing some filming. But I know at the time you were experimenting with motion capture and feeding that into the engine and things like that. How's it been since then?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Having the home, having the treehouse as we call it, has been great. And we're just very lucky with the timings. With the fund, for example, I think with grants going into it, whether if you read the description of a grant and it sounds like you want to email and say, "Is you written this for us?" Then you should apply.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you read it and you're trying to sort of
imagine
your way into
jam your idea into the parameters.
This definitely works in the maritime world, or something, but. When you're reading it and you're like every bullet point, you're kind of like, yeah, totally. Then, so that the timings of everything were really fortuitous for us. And then afterwards, it was fantastic. We sort of moved on from strength to strength in the sort of service providing in the LED world, and there was a huge demand around pandemic and towards the end of and after the pandemic, where people just needed to guarantee that they could film certain things. So a lot of location work got moved back.
And you could offer that certainty, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And we could offer that. But we always had our eye has always been on the value of the game engine. And what we were finding ourselves doing was a lot of video based work, which is fine, playing back videos on LED screens. But where we were very excited was in motion capture animations using game engines, and how digital humans and the future of that kind of filmmaking. So we kept plugging away at that as well. And every time we did something, we just were blown away by it. So we did a short film last year called The Well. And we got a mega grant from Epic Games, which is a small grant just to buy a motion capture suit to be able to just give it a go. And it did really well. People were blown away by it, which was fantastic. And so we had the bedrock of the LED work. We tried to get more people to come and film down in the area, and we struggled, in all honesty, to get. It's growing, the infrastructure here, in terms of the talent pool and things, but there is still a challenge to get people out of London, Bristol, to come and film here.
The obvious areas to come. We've got a lot more players now in the, I'm surprised, speaking to you guys and speaking to others, that the kind of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area, there's a number of people, and they're not even treading on each other's toes, quite complementary. I mean, you've talked about some of the partners that you work with locally, but does it feel like it's getting to the critical mass?
I think the bigger challenge is not necessarily just the talent that you might have locally. It's what comes with a production.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's like a traveling circus, it's got a lot of moving parts, and logistically, in order to bring that down, because often the stuff that we were doing specifically, because it was the LED volume part of a shoot, is normally a part of a shoot, it's not the whole shoot, and therefore to bring people down for a week or 2 or 3 or whatever out of a production that's maybe lasting sort of 6 to 9 months, that's a problem, because it's going to cost quite a lot to move all of that, which we get, and it's cheaper for us to go there for a week.
But I think the exciting thing in the area is it feels like for the first time in the last 8 years that it's starting to really settle into being an area really well known for specifically animation, VFX, which makes perfect sense. We've got the NCCA at Bournemouth University. AUB do a fantastic VFX and animation courses. Bournemouth College do a fantastic CG course. Yeah.
There's now loads of graduates that are already here. We've had this before. We've had a number of them for years, and then they've all flown off to pastures new. But the more opportunities there are, the more that they can.
That's right. And finally, there are projects happening in companies. Outpost and Love are doing things, and us. We're all finally doing things. I think we're getting to the grown up table with things. Particularly Outpost and with Love doing their series. It's fantastic news for the talent coming out of the universities and colleges, because they love it. They love the area. They don't want to move away, but the draw of Soho and the work there. But finally, there's actually exciting projects happening in this area
where
that they don't
stay
have to
in an area that they love anyway.
I mean, that's why we're here. Is it like we said, we're 8 years old now, if you like, but we sort of set up here and refused to move. So we've been very stubborn. Well, no, we made short movies here when we were living in the New Forest, and we stayed here and we made a sort of indie feature and stuff like that. And we were like, no, there's the draw of London, there's the draw of other places, and we love it. We love going there. It's great. We can't knock it, but we didn't want to move. We wanted to be here. And so, flipping it on its head and saying, people can't come to us. It's too costly if you like to move a production here. It's like, well, we are the production now, and this is where we are. So that's
to give you guys a lot of credit. That's part of the reason that we're now getting to this position, because guys like you have been grafting and building the industry. And so what comes next then? You've been on that journey. You've clearly, you've gone. You've got 30 members of staff now from 7 or 8 only a couple of years ago, and moving more into this digital capture animation world. What's next?
Well, I think we're currently in it. So the next bit is now. It's we've got a project.
Next is now. Yeah,
next is now. Next is now, if that's a thing. So we're in a project where we're now basically contracted for the next couple of years. So
wow.
We should sort of deliver towards the end of 2024, and that's on a fully animated feature. Utilizing Unreal Engine, which is exactly what
it's like. It's like the culmination of all of the different streams coming together.
Yeah, and exactly, and the space that we're currently in, and the infrastructure it's got from a tech perspective and space, is what's lending itself to us being able to make this entirely here. So and we're drawing on that melting pot of local talent we've got, because we've always banged the drum for the universities and the colleges alike around here. There's a huge amount of talent that comes out. We see it. A lot of them are friends, and they now either live in LA or Canada or London or whatever. And we've spoken to so many people that would just love to come back if they could.
Yeah,
they just haven't been able to. So like Paul said, with the likes of Love and Outpost and us, hopefully we're that conduit now, where if you've got that talent and you want to work in the industry and you haven't got the desire necessarily to shoot off around the world or down to London or whatever, or up to London even, then great. If we're there and there's
the
a
opportunities,
that's perfect.
Are there locally? Yeah. And I suppose if it's fantastic to hear that news, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it at some point. But I suppose if we hadn't have done that work, and I suppose if the Bounce Back Challenge Fund hadn't have happened, you might not be in the building that you are now to enable all that to happen. I mean, you're clearly on a great trajectory anyway, but hopefully it's helped to really keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I think the momentum's the key. I think we wouldn't have been able to work at the pace required in order to achieve this, because the development in the tools that we're using is happening even during the show. I mean, when we made The Well, there was new tech coming out that we hadn't started the project with, but we're like, oh, where was that when we started this? And one or two of the things we were able to sort of switch over to, which is great. But yeah, it's moving at such a pace. There is no way, if we hadn't had that base and that infrastructure and somewhere to just focus, it wouldn't have been the same if we were all just working from home.
Yeah. It's really exciting. So I suppose kind of parting point, what are your reflections on I suppose interaction with the council and other stakeholders, and also what message would you give to others that were out on the lookout for ways, because actually it wasn't just the fund, it was also the connections you had, I think, with our economic development team that were already talking to you about the businesses. You found that helpful?
I'd say more than that. For example, Chris Shepherd from the economic team. He met us when we first started in Boscombe. We've always had that relationship going forward. Now with Claire Main as well, and all the others in the team. Just there's a constant touching point. And I think maybe where we've done well with our relationship with the council is we've just constantly just had a dialogue. And not. I sometimes, it irks me a little bit when you go to events and there's someone from another company and they're saying, "Well, what are you going to do for us then?" Or tell us. And you're like, "Well, what can they do?" Sometimes there's a grant. They can put their ear to the ground and talk to people because they meet lots of different people. But what are you what are you asking them for? What do you expect?
It works both ways, isn't it?
It does.
And actually, a lot of the stuff that you can get done isn't just with a big fat lump of money. It's conversations about, because again, your current premises, working with Bournemouth Pool College, we knew that they were leaving. It's that dialogue is, I think, absolutely critical.
We've had various partnerships across the years that haven't been. We're not talking about finance here. We're talking about partnerships and help and just that open dialogue,
just
and maintaining it. And don't stop doing what it is that you're doing, or try and go, if we go off down this track, we might qualify for that grant. It's like, why are you trying to qualify for a grant? What is it you're actually trying to achieve? And I think we've never lost focus on that. And like Paul said, when this paperwork landed, it was like, was this written specifically for us? Because it's exactly what we need. Had we not had that dialogue.
For full disclosure, it wasn't, by the way, because somebody will probably email me.
No, but it was definitely written for companies in our position. Who's doing exciting, are there companies out there doing exciting things that might go on to something else after, I don't know, with the pandemic as a catalyst for that.
Yes.
And then I think also, understanding that the way the councils, it's the same with, BFI, the same with Creative England, understanding how they work and who does what inside there, rather than just, speaking to someone from the economic development team and asking about bus routes or something. It's like, it's a big organisation and just, I think, for us, the economic team have been fantastic all throughout our time as a company, for just those little bits and bobs now and again, and advice and networks and introductions and things. And then the grant was fantastic, but I think the value is greater than the grant.
Greater than just the grant. Brilliant.
Yeah,
Chris, Paul, it's been fantastic talking to you and coming to see you and all the amazing things that you're doing down there, and really excited to hear more about this major 2-year project you'll be working on in due course as well. It's exciting times. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, cheers.
So thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you want to hear a little bit more about some of the other journeys that the businesses have been on as we help them through the pandemic, check out some of the other episodes in this mini-series. And also a big urge to all businesses, charities and organisations in the BCP region. Our economic development team at the council are here to support you, both through today and tomorrow, including some of the other grant funding that may be available in the future. So make sure you sign up to our BCP business newsletter, and hopefully we can help you in the future. Thanks for joining us.